Welcome back to the Spiritually Wired podcast. We have a great conversation for you today. I have with us Jenn Pike, and Jenn is a functional integrative diagnostic nutritionist. She's a medical exercise specialist, a yoga and Pilates instructor, and she is one of the leading experts in women's health and hormones in Canada. She spent 30 years helping women connect the dots between how they feel and why they feel that way. It was such a beautiful conversation. I have to say, like, for me personally, I received so much because we are living in a world right now where the landscape is confusing. There is so much information out there when it comes to health and especially hormones. And so I really appreciate how Jenn simplifies everything. We spend a lot of time talking about sleep and how to optimize our sleep. And certainly that's something that I've been going through on a personal level, but then also coming back to the idea of trusting yourself and trusting your body in the different chapters of your life. We go to different places from, what her thoughts are on coffee, what an optimal morning and evening ritual is in order to actually help you with your sleep, and just so much more. You are going to love Jenn and all of the wisdom that she brings to the podcast. So enjoy. Hi, I'm Renée Walker, a mindset mentor, speaker, and lover of all things spiritual. I believe that at our core, we are all spiritually wired for love, peace, success, and abundance. Here on the podcast, we're diving into mindset, wellness, and business, but always through a spiritual lens. Let's just say we're going deep, but we're keeping it light. So let's elevate your life from the inside out, one conversation at a time. Welcome to Spiritually Wired. Welcome to the podcast, Jenn.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for where our conversation is going to go today.
So am I, because I have been doing this deep dive into your world, and I just want to say how refreshing your perspective is. As the years have gone on. One of the words that always keeps pulling at me is bringing back more simplicity into my life. I feel like in so many ways it's gotten complicated, and I love how you have this fresh, very simple approach to women's health, to hormones, to wellness, to all of it. So maybe we can start there. Where do you feel that maybe we are overcomplicating things right now?
Oh, how much time do we have? I think it is, and I don't know that that is necessarily in our nature as the woman who's listening to this to try to wake up every day and make it harder on herself that it has to be. I really do think that that is what we've been indoctrinated with, because we, especially nowadays, like if we were to go back to the beginning of my career, clinical practice 25 years ago, in the health and wellness industry 30 years ago, it wasn't as complicated for people because there just wasn't as many opinions. There weren't as many voices. There wasn't as many resources and, influencers and Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and podcast and audiobooks. It just wasn't. Like, your education was going to happen at Indigo Chapters or Kohl's bookstore, and you were going to go into the health section and there would be like 20 books, and you would pick one and you would start to implement. Nowadays, where it's so challenging is we don't know what information is for us, who to believe, what to apply. It becomes trickier for women as well, too, because if every day, and oftentimes we don't even realize this is happening, but if every day you wake up and you're given a new suggestion, a new tip, a new strategy, you never have the opportunity to really create any type of foundation in your health. So the story we tell ourselves is, I'm trying so hard. I'm doing all the right things. I'm doing what everybody is suggesting. It's like, yes, and you're also probably not recognizing you are changing your approach all the time, which is why it feels hard and why you feel like you're not making any progress, because you are essentially starting a new job for yourself every single day. And that's where a lot of women feel like they're not getting ahead. So I think right now that's kind of the bigger one. I also think that it feels hard because we're already doing a lot of harder things in our actual life with our family, our home, our career. When you are a woman that is coming into your late 30s, your 40s, 50s, and beyond, you also probably have new responsibility you probably didn't think was going to be yours, which is your parents and other family members. And so there's a lot of contributing factors that in our mind, we go, well, I'm just going to create a health goal and I'm going to stick to the goal and I'm going to achieve the thing. And then life is going to throw all of these other things at you that is really going to challenge your ability, your capacity, your time, your energy. And if this goal that you've set for yourself matters enough to make that the priority in spite of all of the other things happening.
Hmm. The word that was coming to me as you were speaking, Jenn, was trust. And, on a spiritual level, we speak a lot about learning to trust, right? Trust in your connection with yourself and connection with whatever higher power you connect with. But I've found, and this is just speaking from a personal level. I turned 50 this past year, and I feel like I started to lose the trust that I had in myself and in my body. It's
Mhm.
actually making me emotional as we're having this conversation because I'm not sure that I had fully connected it with that. There was a moment where, like before, when I was younger and in my 30s, in my early 40s, it's like it feels like if you do the things, your body's going to respond in a certain way. And then at a certain point, maybe I felt like it wasn't quite working in the same way. And so I started to lose that trust. And then that's when we start to look outside of ourselves and, like, what's the answer? Like, somebody give me the answer. And then, you go from one thing to the next.
Well, and here's the thing, and this isn't like some kind of hypothesis that I have. This again is being in community for 30 years with women. And all the way going back to when I was like a teen growing up, is that none of us were ever actually given the tools, the education, and the knowledge about our bodies, period. We were not given it about any of the hormonal changes that were going to happen. We weren't given it about understanding our cycle. We weren't given it about our period, even understanding that your cycle and your period are not the same thing. We weren't given the education about, prenatal, during pregnancy, post, no women were given education about perimenopause unless you've been on earth for the last couple of years. And now that's all you hear. So even this idea of feeling like women will say exactly what they said. I used to feel more connected to my body. I used to feel like I had this level of trust because I would do A plus B and it would achieve X. But the reality is that for most women, that was a false premise of what we thought trust and connection was to our body. We don't build trust and connection because the body listens and responds. We build trust and connection because we listen to the body. We
Mm.
have a deeper understanding. And this is the gap that I have been trying to fill in, the bridge I have been trying to build for the last 3 decades. And for me, it started, I can remember being, I grew up in a household where I was fortunate enough because my oldest sister was so much older than me that, you know, I was 4 when she was 16. So the conversation of a period and hormonal things and all of that, it was just all out in our house. Nothing was embarrassing. Nothing was like bathroom talk, like it was at the dinner table. So for
Mhm.
me growing up, I had this different awareness and connection to body and all of that than any of my friends did. And I can remember 15 years old in grade 10 at Newmarket High School, where I'm saying this because we're both from Ontario, being in gym class and coming out of health class. And at this point now, they separated the girls from the boys in gym health class. And so we come out of health class and we're in the change room. And I'm sitting there with all my girlfriends and I'm like, you do understand everything that was just said in there is actually not what it is. And I'm 15 years old and they're like, what? And so we're starting to have these deeper conversations. And I recognize I already at this age am understanding and have knowledge to things none of my other friends who are the same age and should know have. And so I kind of became that girl in high school that when someone had a health thing, a period thing, even a question around like birth control, any of that, it'd be like, where's Jenn Pike? And that just kind of like started to happen. And same thing with fitness, right? All of those things. My dad had me in a gym with him at a very young age where I was witnessing, I was having an experience of seeing bodies move in all these different ways, all ages, shapes, and sizes. So I knew pretty young in my teens, I'm doing something in health. Like, I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but I'm going to do something here. And then fast forward, like in my 20s, when I didn't have children yet, and majority of the clients I was working with were all mothers. And I was hearing what they were saying. And I remember thinking to myself, there's something that fitness and nutrition alone are not going to hit. Like, I wonder what's actually happening inside of their body. And so I went back to school to understand like blood chemistry so that I could say to them, can you like bring in your blood work so I can read it? Because I feel like maybe there's something going on with your thyroid or going on in a certain area, but I'd love to be able to like quantify that and actually like look at your data. And this just like over the years, me just like culling more information. And what I learned as a trainer, as a practitioner, as a clinician was the best solution or the best answer for these women was actually not me telling them what to do. It was asking them better quality questions so they can start to understand more about what are these actual symptoms and what are they here to tell me? And that to me is where the real work begins.
Yeah. And it's the piece that it's so true what you're saying. We've just never been taught, the space was never quite there for so many of us to
Mhm.
actually ask ourselves those questions and to
Yeah.
become more intimate with our body that we just don't necessarily, unless you were, blessed to grow up in a home where it was talked about. For most people, it wasn't.
No, and continues to this day. And
Yeah.
so, I'll have women, I mean, this is very common because the nature of what I do. They're like, my hormones are all over the place. We just have to get my hormones under control. And I'm like, and the belief is, and because we've been taught this, you book an appointment, you have a session. By the end of the session, all your questions should be answered.
Hmm.
And now you have a plan. And now you're healed. Like everything's going to be
Hmm.
fine. You just have to follow the plan. That's not how this works. And I always say to women, and this is why I shifted from doing a one-to-one practice after 18 years of clinical practice and became fully known for all of our group programs, because I was like, if you do not start to learn and understand the why behind the what, you will be chasing appointment after appointment and practitioner after practitioner. And you're always going to feel like, well, that person didn't help and this person. And it's like, no, show me the receipts of where you've been part of your learning. Because to go to someone to have them just give you supplements, create a meal plan, slap together a protocol. If they have not done a full health history intake, and I mean full, like, do you know what your mother's pregnancy was like with you and the delivery when you entered this world? Do you know what your health was as a child? What was happening in the environment around you? Do you know your ACE score, your advanced childhood experiences? There are so many different aspects of our health and our bodies that we just don't know about. And to be quite honest, most people don't care until something feels wrong. They don't
Hmm.
care until, like, for a lot of women I work in their 40s and beyond, they're also frustrated and kind of pissed off because they're like, I never had to worry about anything with my body until I couldn't sleep. I had no patience. All of a sudden I have anxiety. My hair's falling out. I'm gaining weight. I have all these food sensitivities. Never had that before. And then it's so easy right now to just blame it on hormones, to blame it on perimenopause and menopause. And I always say to women, like, perimenopause and menopause are not going to cause your symptoms. They are going to be a litmus test for what was going on behind the scenes for so long that now when you lose some of those hormonal resources, when they're not, there's no equilibrium anymore and it's a little bit chaotic, what is your body really here to show us and what needs to be done? So It's the deeper we can start to understand what's going on with our body. Like I will say to women in the beginning, before we get to this point where I give you what you're asking me for, like the supplement, the, encouragement to go do something like HRT or whatever it might be. Like, do you know the difference between your period and your cycle? Can you explain it to me? Do you actually know what gland communicates with your ovaries? Do you know what happens when you go into perimenopause? Like, if they're like, no clue, like, then this is actually where we're going to start. I'm going to teach you some of the things so that when I'm recommending to you to eat within the first couple of hours of waking up and get exposure to natural light, you're going to know why, and then you're going to be more inclined to do it. Then when I'm suggesting you stop having the glass of wine at dinner, and that could be one of the reasons you are waking up hot, dripping in sweat, and can't fall back asleep in the middle of the night, you're going to understand why. Instead of just feeling like, I'm on a diet, I'm on a plan, I'm not allowed to. Like when I hear women saying that, well, I'm on this plan or program, I'm not allowed to. I'm like, well, this isn't going to end well.
It rarely does.
Yeah.
Oh, so you were just mentioning about the how easy it is to blame hormones. And
Mhm.
I think it's so true. I mean, I think it's a good thing that we are more educated in it, that
Mhm.
there is more conversation around it. And at the same time, it's so easy to make it all about that as
Yeah.
well. Um, and one of the things, so you did say sleep. I know for me, that was like the first thing that started to change. Always been a great sleeper my whole life. I go to
Yeah.
sleep early, fall asleep, sleep through the night. Anything can happen. I would wake up the next morning feeling refreshed. And then that was the first thing that started to change where, falling asleep very easily, but then waking up more in the middle of the night. And so dealing with that. And you have, like, again, I've heard you share, and I love the way we tend to right away. I was blaming my hormones because that's what you hear
Yeah.
being said. So, what's your take on sleep? Because I know so many women are affected by it.
Yeah. So the latest studies and research, which actually one of my really good friends and colleagues, Andrea Donsky, just published a book called Nourishing Menopause. And there's 7 published studies that she did in there in conjunction with the Menopause Society and a few other organizations. There's 103 symptoms that are categorized under perimenopause as of now. And in the top 10, most people think hot flashes and night sweats would be in there. They're not. The hot flashes are actually number 11, but sleep is number 3. The first is extreme fatigue and brain fog and sleep. So these are the top 3. They're all like neurocognitive issues, which is like we're not rested, we've got brain fog, we don't feel as sharp, we don't have that focus and clarity. And sleep is a huge component of that. If you're waking up multiple times throughout the night, you're waking up a lot earlier than you desire to, and the body and the brain does not have that same level of rest, you don't have the same recovery and repair mechanisms. So usually for women, progesterone is what helps us to fall asleep, and estrogen is responsible for like the sleep architecture. So we go through different phases of sleep. We transition from light into REM, into deep, and back into light sleep. And your sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone being 2 of them, do play a role in this. We have other hormones that impact this. So cortisol and insulin also impact this, and melatonin is a hormone. And so it's multifactorial, but for a lot of women in the beginning, what starts to happen is usually progesterone is the first of the reproductive hormones that starts to decline. And why that is that as the body is starting to get into perimenopause, we don't ovulate every single month anymore. And the way you actually produce the richest source of progesterone is through ovulation. The follicles on your ovaries need to ripen and mature. Estrogen plays the role in that. Then the chosen one is going to be released, the egg out of the follicle, and you will ovulate. And then the body utilizes the material from that egg to break it down and now manufacture progesterone. So when you start to have fewer ovulatory cycles, or you have a weaker pulse in that connection from the brain to the ovaries for that to happen, there's not as much progesterone. Estrogen doesn't just start to decline and drop off. It is a little bit more kind of chaotic in perimenopause, where you might have some months where you make like a boatload of estrogen, and then other months you may not. And so what happens is when you now start to have this unbound energy of estrogen, you don't have enough progesterone, you will notice not only is it harder to fall asleep, but you are a much lighter sleeper. So the things that never used to wake you up, your partner moving around, the pet on the bed, the, sounds in your house from your kids, the street lights, whatever it is, all of a sudden now you are hyper aware of your environment and your surroundings. When estrogen starts to become more depleted more often, because it's a gradual decline in most cases, sometimes things happen more abruptly. There can be a lot of different journeys into menopause. But in most cases, it's a gradual decline. And so when estrogen and progesterone are both at those lower ends, this is where women are going to say, like, I can't fall asleep. I can't stay asleep. I'm up in the middle of the night for a couple of hours. And so the hormone piece is there. But then when this is happening, all of this is a big stressor to your nervous system and to your body. And so your adrenals, they will dump out cortisol at times of the day that they are not supposed to. We should produce our largest amount of cortisol within our first, hour to two of waking. This is why being able to see natural light and sunlight in the morning is so important. That is what gets the body into that circadian rhythm. But when you come into the evening, your cortisol should have been doing this taper, being at its lowest, coming towards bed. And that is because we can't have cortisol and melatonin present at the same time. It's like one's an off switch and one's an on switch. So we need cortisol to come down to give the cues to the other neurotransmitters for sleep to happen. So in the middle of the night, you wake up, you start tossing and turning. Maybe you stand up to go to the bathroom, you look at your phone, you see light. The body's starting to get these cues like, oh my God, I'm still really freaking tired, but I'm seeing light. This person is in motion. Like, I think we need to start to get cortisol to come on the scene, because I think we're up and the day is happening. Now, cortisol is very quick to be produced, very slow to metabolize and break down. So now you have given your body these messages. We're up. You get this dump of cortisol, and you now have to wait, typically a couple hours, for that to wear itself off for you to get back into that next state of sleep. Now, something else can happen in the middle of the night where your body will wake you because you have low blood sugar. So if you don't work on stabilizing blood sugar throughout the day, you're that kind of person where you're just kind of chasing your next meal and your next pick-me-up. You turn to a lot of stimulants. You maybe fast too often. I see this all the time with women. I'm always like, coffee is not a meal. We need to have actual food if you're going to have that coffee. But you'll know this is you, where you have more kind of hypoglycemic tendencies. So you crave a lot of sweets and stimulants. You're always looking for the next coffee, the next latte, the next that you finish a meal and you're like, I just need something to finish the meal off. And you need to eat every couple of hours. And when you go too long without eating, you start to feel unglued. You get nauseous, you get a headache. You're like, oh my God, I don't care what it is. I have to eat something. If this is your daytime, this is going to follow you to bed in the evening. And now if we don't have that beautiful, stable glucose and insulin overnight, and your body starts to feel your blood sugar drop, protectively, it is going to wake you up, and it is going to say to the body, hey, pancreas, I'm going to need some glucose. I'm going to need some insulin on the scene here, because the brain's going to need that so we don't slip into a coma. Adrenals, this is a stressful situation. So I'm going to need some cortisol or some adrenaline to also be released to wake this individual up. And so these are mainly the reasons as to why we start to struggle with sleep. So before we even talk about hormones, I am like, let's get blood sugar stability in check. If we were to start to nourish your body properly during the day, carbohydrates, protein, fats, and healthy fiber at each of your meals throughout the day, we make sure you're hydrated. Do you start to sleep better? If you start to sleep better, then we know that it wasn't estrogen and progesterone. It was unstable insulin, blood sugar, and probably cortisol that were playing a bigger role. And conversely, if we go and support the blood sugar and you're like, I am still waking up. Okay, well, now we've supported the blood sugar piece. Now we'll have the conversation about bringing the hormones in. Does that make sense how I explain all that?
It makes so much sense. And thank you, because I feel like we just got a mini course in everything that can go on. And it makes so much sense. I felt like you were describing so much of what I've even witnessed personally going on. So very helpful.
Yeah.
And the environment piece too, in that it it it's certainly it's the fact that we're like hyper aware, as you said, of our environment. Like that just resonates as so that's exactly what it is. This hyper awareness, but then there's so much more to it. There's so much more. So thank you for explaining it in such a simple and easy to understand way.
Yeah, I'll share one more thing on this because about a week ago, maybe a little bit more now, I had shared in my stories on Instagram. I had had like a brutal sleep, and my husband played a huge role in why I had a brutal sleep. And I was like sharing in stories about this, and I've never had a share go so viral in my DMs of so many women sharing similar experiences, so many women being like, why do you even still sleep with your husband at this stage? Like, how do you guys not have your own rooms and your own beds yet? And I was like, what? It honestly, Renee, I was like, 90% of my community do not sleep with their partners based on. So then I started to collect the data and I was asking these women like more questions because I'm like, this is so fascinating. I had, a populace on Instagram that was saying, I could never, that was me. I could never not sleep with my husband, right? Like I'm always going to share a room and a bed with him. And then I had the subset that were like, if I stayed in a room with my husband, we were getting a divorce. So instead of getting a real divorce, we got a bed divorce. And it was the best thing we ever did for our marriage. And then all these different stories. And so, for me, I said, one of the things I have noticed, I'm going to be 47, is that, and the same as you, always a great sleeper outside of when the kids were little, is that I hear and I'm aware of everything. I go to bed and it looks like in the morning, it looks like I didn't even sleep on the bed. I can literally just fold my part of the blanket over. My husband looks like he got into a bar fight with 12 alligators. I wake up and I'm like, what the actual F happened when you were sleeping? Tell me about your dreams, because I think you're under attack. His bed, he is like leg out, leg in, blankets on, blankets off, toss and turn. He wakes up to pee in the middle of the night. Then we have a 15-year-old senior citizen dog, and she likes to wake up at like 5:07 a.m. just to stretch and give herself a bath and then go back to bed. And then we have an 18 and 20-year-old who work at different times of the day. They have a life. They go in and come out. And on this particular night, I was like, I'm going to throat punch my husband. I'm ready to give the dog away, and these kids can find their own damn place to live in. I was just like, I am done. And so I shared it very honestly in this way. And the response was just huge. And here's the other thing is it's like, we can laugh about it, but for so many women, they would never be as like, I'm doing the quotations, as brazen to be honest about all those things. Just, I don't know if we can swear on this show, but like effing irritating them. And you take a woman that is sleep deprived and is not nourished and not rested, she's not the best version of herself. She's not going to be
No,
as nice. She's not going to have the patience. I'm an entrepreneur like you. Like, this brain is worth everything to me. And if I can't function and show up in a way where I can be articulate with my words and I can lead, that to me is like, you might as well take my arm off.
absolutely. I thank you for bringing it up, because it is a conversation that we tend to have more in private with our friends. And I think it's so important I heard of it as being called like sleep divorce.
Yeah.
And it is a thing. And I was the same thing being younger. Oh my goodness, never. I remember my husband and I probably sharing too much. He's like, no, we'll never get a king. Like, it needs
Yeah.
to be a
Oh,
queen
yeah.
so that
Same.
we're close, right? Then fast forward to the king size bed, would never
Yeah.
go to a smaller bed.
You're like, do the beds come with wings? Because I'm going to need my own wing now.
No, and now you can see why. And because men seem to be less affected with the sleep aspect as they get older, like my husband doesn't quite understand. So he feels like that is such a dramatic
Yes,
thing to do. And yet, more and more, I can see the value in it just from a pure health perspective, like taking
completely.
care of yourself. And you brought up the adult kids. That's the other piece that's really interesting. Like when the kids were younger, of course, we're also younger at that time too. But your kids are safe. They're in your home. You put away the phone. You have your sleep. But now with kids, I have one that lives in Europe, one that lives here, and they're coming in and out. There is this constant alert. Like that's
Yeah.
exactly what you said, like a hypersensitivity also to not even your immediate environment, but are they okay?
Yes.
That's
And this
always
is
there.
why a couple of years ago, so ours are 18 and 20, like they're 17 and 19, but our 19-year-old's going to be 20 next week and the 18-year-old
Mm.
year old soon. And when they both got their licenses and started to drive, my sleep changed. Now, can I say that that's because my progesterone was getting lower and that was perimenopause? No, it's because I'm a mother and my kids were on the road driving. And where we live, you've been to Kelowna. Like it is, you have to be worried about deer. It's not a matter of if, like all the time. So there's deer everywhere at night. There are bear, there are coyote. There is always something crossing the road that can seriously impact and happens in the blink of an eye. There's crosswalks here, roundabouts, like every type of vehicular thing where you're like, there is a great chance that they're not going to be paying attention. Or even if they are, something could happen. And so that is also this understanding when we talk about the environment around us of just how much we are carrying in our nervous system. And, I said to my husband, because I was sharing with him all the data that I was collecting, and he was like, your ladies are mean. They all just want us to sleep apart. And I was like, listen, and we haven't changed anything about our sleeping arrangements right now. But I said to him, if this were to like continue, I even think sleeping separately a few nights a week, because like I'm going to be mad at you all the time, or I'm going to be mad at the kids, or I'm going to start to resent all of you living in this house if I cannot function and don't feel myself. And so many women, they just slap this on like another badge of honor. I'll just sacrifice myself. And then they come to work with someone like me and they give me the whole rundown of all of the symptoms and why they think they need to start taking this and that. And I'm like, if we could get your sleep dialed in, I am telling you, so many of these surface level symptoms might completely disappear. And at the very least, they would be so much less in intensity. And some of us just aren't prepared to make a decision like sleeping in a separate room a couple of nights a week, and again, like everybody has to choose that for them. But if you are someone who's saying, like, it's the languaging, if you're saying like, I am suffering because of my lack of sleep, there's a different decision to be made.
Absolutely. And a great permission to that. It doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Mhm.
Maybe there's a solution that, as you said, means that it's a couple of days a week. Or I know I was hosting a big event and I was very clear on I'm going to sleep in a separate room prior
Yep.
to the event because I knew I wanted to show up in my best self. I wanted to be rested. I also didn't want to pick up on anything that somebody could have. And it was a great decision. And
Yeah.
and it often comes down to communication,
Yeah.
right? We think that our spouses understand what we're going through. Often they don't. They just see the
No,
frustrated version of ourselves because we're not
completely.
quite opening up. And one of the things that I'm really receiving from you too is the importance of understanding the why. And I think it goes for ourselves, but then also anyone else in our families.
Good.
They need to understand where you're coming from as well. Jen, there's like about 100 questions I'm going to ask you right now. So I'm going to try to dial it down. Where are we going to go? I'm curious your take on coffee.
I mean, I myself am not a coffee drinker. I'm a matcha drinker, but there's nothing innately wrong with coffee. I think where coffee kind of gets abused sometimes, or where it may not feel good in your body, is I'm a huge proponent of using really good quality. So coffee is actually innately pretty dang high in molds and alpha toxins. And so using organic, fair trade, very clean coffee, not having it on an empty stomach is probably one of the best suggestions, especially as you have less stability, maybe with hormones overall. And if you are someone that when I describe those hypoglycemic tendencies, you're like, that is me. Enjoy your coffee, but have it with your meal, or have it, after your meal. So kind of bridging that gap. But there's nothing like, coffee is not an unhealthy experience to have for yourself, but there's a difference between having, a coffee and having the entire carafe to yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the importance of the daylight first thing in the morning. Can you expand a little bit on why that's important?
Yeah. So when we get the way that our body is signaled for the ability to actually start to produce cortisol and to also downregulate it is based on your circadian rhythm, which is completely set by light and dark. And so when you wake in the morning, there's something called your cortisol awakening response. And so when your eyes wake, so you get it through the eyes and the pineal gland, this sends a message down to those adrenal glands to start to produce cortisol. Sun is up, light is out, day is going to start, and you will produce the largest amount of cortisol within that awakening response. That happens within your first 60 to 90 minutes if it's taking 2 hours, that's a delayed response. So really within your first hour-ish of waking, the body should be producing the largest amount of cortisol, and then you budget. And this is to get you up, to get you in motion. So when people say things to me like, I am dragging myself to get out of bed, I have to snooze multiple times. I'm not kidding you, the amount of women I've worked with who have the coffee machine in the bedroom because they're I just if I don't get it, I can't get up and get going. So that's the other thing with coffee is explain to me, do you just love it, or is it you can't function without it? Because that's a different suggestion, right? So we want to have our body naturally produce cortisol. We shouldn't have to use something like caffeine in order to find energy, or use sugar or simple carbs in the morning. Body should produce it. And then we slowly budget it throughout the day. So that as you're coming in towards the afternoon, it's going to be at a lower point than it was in the morning. And then you are going to have it come to its lowest point coming into the evening. Cortisol is like the sun. So when the sun sets and the moon rises, melatonin is the moon. So melatonin is a hormone that does many things in the body, one of which is support sleep structure. And so that's why getting morning light is so important for cortisol. And then again, removing as much light as possible in the evening so that now cortisol is starting to drop down. And now we have melatonin coming on the scene. And this represents your circadian rhythm. All 12 major systems in your body and every cell have receptors on them that depend upon a healthy circadian rhythm. So if your wake sleep cycles are all over the place, in the evening, it is very bright in your home, you're falling asleep on your iPad or on your phone and you're getting blue light exposure, that is also probably when you do fall asleep because your eyes are burning, you will most likely wake a couple hours later as a rebound effect.
So what would be an ideal, and I know that everyone is different, but ideally, how would you begin your day and how would you wrap up your day at the end of the day? What would be a good way to wake up in the morning and start your day?
It would be to wake up and open your blinds. Get that natural light exposure right where you are. It depends on your schedule. I had my husband a few years ago install for me one of those extendable mirrors to get ready and do your face routine and makeup right on the frame of the window. So instead of being under artificial fluorescent lights in the bathroom, I get ready in front of the mirror. And it doesn't have to be sunny out. It can even be a gloomy day, but it's the natural light is what is getting into the eyes. And that is what is sending that message. If you're someone that wakes up when it's dark, or like in the winter in North America, it's quite dark in the morning, you could use a light box, very inexpensive, that you can just purchase on Amazon. And you could just, they're called oftentimes like a happy box or like a luxe box. You can get them for like $20 to $40, nothing crazy. So that would be in your morning, is just that natural light exposure. So if you're going to have your coffee or tea, can you do it near the window instead of in a dark, closed in space? Could you go for a walk in the morning, right? Even just like 5-7 minutes. We don't need to have a ton of exposure, just enough. And then in the evening, it's like, what are the things that are going to wind your system down? And sometimes we make that really complicated, but I would just say, what did you used to do for your children when they were younger and you were trying to give them all the cues like bedtime is coming? You would make the house a little more quiet. You would give them a bath. You would maybe massage some lotion or oils into their body. You would read to them. You would rock them. You would soothe. You would calm. Maybe you had a white noise machine on. You would make the room very dark. It's no different when you are an adult.
Mhm.
It's like, as a woman, like I get myself into the bedroom about a half an hour before I actually want to go to bed. So by like 9 o'clock at the latest, I'm in the bathroom, and I take time to wash my face. Like, I'm not throwing water at it. I am like massaging my products into my body. I'm doing that. I'm taking my magnesium or whatever else I'm taking at night. I'm doing that. I get into bed. I either like read or journal a little bit. And again, and blue lights on, or blockers, and just giving all the cues to my body. Like, it is now time to calm and rest. There's nothing else for us to do to get ready
Mm.
for bed.
Beautiful. I love it. Does it matter how long we are in the sun? Like, is there a certain amount of time that we want to aim for in the morning, or just as much as you can,
I mean, your best
basically?
case scenario would be like 10 to 20 minutes of that
Yeah.
exposure would be awesome.
Mhm.
But, again, it's like, we don't want to put these rigid rules on it where it's like, well,
Mhm.
I can't get 10 minutes in, I can only get 5. So what's the point? Get the 5. Like, in the
Yeah.
beginning, if you can get 60 seconds, take it.
Mhm. No, this is what I'm appreciating so much again from what you're saying is these are like the simple ways that like it's doable. It's
Yeah.
not, there's so much talk around biohacking and, I know that there's some things that I personally enjoy and love. And at the same time, like that is where everything is feeling so complicated when we can come
Yes.
back to what the earth is already providing for us. Like our body knows what it needs inherently, intuitively.
And your body is actually your best biohacking tool that you own, that is free and will cost you nothing. But we bypass that because we're heavily marketed and influenced to that you have to own all the things. And listen,
Yeah.
I own a red light. I own an infrared sauna. I have a biomat. I have all those things, but I dialed all the basics in first, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
and do you just own a bunch of things to say you have them, but do you ever even use them? Because it's like, if they just stay in that spot, they're doing nothing for you. As where I say to women, why don't you just keep your money in your pockets right now? And how about we just start to use your own body and like, let's work on your circadian rhythm. That's the number one biohacking portal into your body that we have. How about we work on your breath? How about we work on how your mobility? Like, there's all different things that we can do. Why don't we work on supporting your vagal tone? All of these things, quote unquote, biohack your system. And all that actually means is you are tapping in on a cellular level to your own biology, trying to support your own physiology, which then has resulted in your health. You don't have to own a bunch of tools to do that. You just have to start to apply what you already have. And then when you get to a point where these are the things you just do normally and naturally, you're like, this is just part of who I am. What do I do? Then you can start to add some of those other pillars on, but you don't need it in the beginning. And listen, like I said, I own them. I have discount codes for them, but I'm not leading with that. Do these things first, create your simplicity method, then start to stack on top.
Yes, I mean, we definitely live in this world now where we're always like looking for the quick fixes, and it's an industry, right? Wellness is an
Oh,
industry, and so we're constantly. And I do like in my world, from like in spirituality, spirituality is also now, an industry, and it's so easy to get lost in all of the quote things that we're being sold on when there's no bypassing time and silence and stillness with yourself.
yep.
There's no way to bypass that. And so, yeah, it's so important to have this conversation. If we can circle back, because you were going there right now to, we started the conversation around learning to trust ourselves again. And part of it, as you said, part of the work that you do is you really invite people to go back, but like go really back
Yeah.
into their past and learning to understand. So, can you walk us through a little bit, like, why is it important for me today? With what's happening in my body today, why is it important for me to understand what was happening when my mother was pregnant for me or when she gave birth? Why do we want to take the time to go there?
You're today days old as the sum of all of the parts that have happened in your life to create the woman that is sitting in front of me right now.
Ooh.
Mentally, physically, spiritually, soulfully, physically, all of it. And so we don't connect to that. We think I'm a result today of my habits yesterday. Was I good or bad yesterday? Did I make good decisions or bad decisions? Did I stay on track or did I fall off the wagon? And that's why we're sitting here today feeling the way that we're feeling. And it's simply not true. Those things will influence how you're feeling, but they're not the root system that makes up the you that you are and the way that you show up in the world. So when we go back, it's like also most women were never taught that you were literally an egg inside of a follicle in your mother's ovary when your mother was in your grandmother's body. So
Mm,
when we talk about, people say things on the surface like ancestral experiences and trauma and lineage and what gets passed forward and passed down. The experience that we have in utero, and this working in the spiritual realm, is that most of the things that have actually shaped who we are happened in our nonverbal years when we were much, much younger. And you can look at the work of so many different clinicians out into the world. You can talk about the Dr. Gabor Mates. You can look at the Louise Hayes. You can look at the Joe Dispenzas, Bruce Lipton, all of them. And everything typically has happened before the age of 7, the most impactful typically before the age of 2, so in our nonverbal years. So even understanding, like, was your mother safe in her environment when you were being created and being held in her body? What was your experience coming into the world? Was it a smooth birth? Was it a traumatic birth? What was the environment at home? These are also part of like understanding your advanced childhood experiences. And there's actually like a scoring mechanism that can help you to understand why maybe your nervous system is hardwired a certain way, why you have certain beliefs and stories and upper limiting beliefs that most of our beliefs actually are not ours. They were influenced or passed down to us. We're borrowing other people's beliefs, and then we're building a life on borrowed beliefs. And
mm,
we feel out of alignment. We'll call it incongruent, right? Those kind of things until we start to understand that, oh, this is actually what I believe, how I feel. So that's part of it. The other is understanding. Let's say as a child that you were on a lot of antibiotics, got a lot of ear infections, a lot of like tonsil issues, you were constipated as a baby. And so there was a lot of interventions that happened in the early years of being an infant to being a young child. Well, all of those are going to create an imprint on your digestive and your gut health, the whole terrain. They're also, if the gut terrain is impacted, the gut and the brain share an axis. So even just your ability as a kid to stay focused, pay attention, were you labeled with behavioral issues, right? Those kind of things make a difference. Did you have a lot of skin issues? Were you on the birth control pill? How old were you when you got your period? What did that feel like for you? Was that celebrated? Was that hidden? Was it painful? Did you miss school? Did you throw up? Did you get headaches? Were you on Advil, Tylenol, or Midol pill for most of your teen years to manage your period? Did you get put on the birth control pill because you had irregular cycles or acne? Were you told to use an IUD? Did you have a combination of all of those things? What happened when you got into your early 20s and now you were at this time in life where you have pressure from either school, sport that you've gone deeper with, a career you're starting? Maybe you're now in like your first big relationship of your life. You get into your mid 20s and now it's this whole like, I got to grow up and become an adult. I need to earn enough money. I need to be able to live on my own. I'm going to start a family. Now it's all of that. You get into your 30s and that decade is just like thick as mud because now maybe you've had the children. You're trying to pay for the home, still build yourself, your marriage, all of these things. And then women get into their 40s and they're like, holy shit, that was a deep
Mhm.
4 decades that I've experienced, but we don't think about it that way. We just go, I'm exhausted. Now I'm in perimenopause. And you have your kids that are aging. You have your parents that are aging. You have you, this woman that's in the middle, who for most women internally will say, I no longer identify with the woman that I was or I had to be in all those parts of my life. There is something different in me now in my 40s or in my 50s, and I can feel it. It's like right at the surface bubbling up. I don't know how to bring it forward. I don't feel like I have permission to, or I have the time and space or the resources to. And so she's living in life, walking, marching forward when she wants to be pushing her elbows out and like break free of whatever those constructs are. And so then within all of this is where your body is going to start to give you symptoms, signs. It's going to express itself in ways that you maybe don't understand, or maybe you don't feel like it is safe enough to be honest about those things. And so that is why going back and understanding your life is so important to understand the woman you are today and how this shows up, not just in your body, in your business, in your relationships, in your finances, and what that is going to look like or could look like for you moving forward.
This is so important. I know that every person listening is going to resonate with this in some way because we want to fix the symptom. So we think, oh, this is what I'm experiencing. Let's fix the symptom. And yet what you are reminding us is that we are the accumulation of everything. And so this is the point now where now your body is manifesting it in a certain way that is really inviting you to, like, there comes a time when there maybe is no choice, where you really need to work through whatever it is that your body is manifesting. But it's more than that, right? That's the piece that we're always missing, as we see it as this physical thing when it is, it's so much deeper than that. So I can see how going back and understanding and just gaining awareness, seeing yourself as a whole being and not just the version of you today. I love how the way in which you say it is that you're all of the previous versions of you as well.
Yeah.
So incredibly important. And it can feel a little bit overwhelming, would you say? So how do you work with people? So if someone is listening and they either are feeling, okay, I hear you. I know that I'm being asked, something needs to shift right now. Where do I start? But I also know that you have incredible resources for people. So if
Yeah.
you can share those.
So, I mean, the best resources in terms of being able to, on your own, just, soak up the info would be on my podcast, which is the Simplicity Sessions. There's 600 episodes on the podcast now. So you've got a lot of history to go back into. And then it would be my programs, my private practice. I actually don't take on any new clients at this point in my private practice because when I start working with clients, I work with them for a very long time. And so where women come in to meet me is inside of my group programs. And then I have other practitioners and coaches on my team that when and if they need that one-to-one support for running any functional test, or they really just need to have like a dialed in session as we discussed, then I would refer them to one of the clinicians on my team to create that level of support.
Beautiful. Would you, to wrap it up, since we are on the Spiritually Wired podcast, do you have a spiritual practice? Like, where do you find spirituality fits in for you in terms of the whole picture of us as humans?
I mean, for me personally, it's with me every day from the
Mhm.
time I wake up until I go to bed. And that is a big one of like everything filters through. What does this feel like for me on like a soul and a cellular level? And so I don't my daily practice are my walks. My walk is medicine. I don't listen to anything on my walks other than myself. And I really process because I teach and do this and it's like a lot of energy out. I process a lot internally and I process through movement. So, how I move my body, the way I begin and end my day, journaling is really cathartic for me as well, too. So, those are just practices that I have found at this time in my life work really well. And I've gone through different times in my life where it's been more structured and routined. And so, I also just create the permission for me that I give to other women, which is I allow there to be a lot of ebb and flow depending on the season that I'm in. And right now I'm in a season where the more time I spend outside, the more clear I am inside.
Mhm. And I think it's so important to speak about the seasons and to recognize and honor where you are,
Yeah.
because we forget that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, this is a conversation that I could just that could keep going. You are such a wealth of information, and I love your grounded, real approach to it. I feel that there is kind of no fluff to it. It's just this is what it is, and I connect with it in such a deep way. So I want to thank you for being here, for sharing your time with us. We are going to link all of your information in the show notes. And I want to remind you, if you're listening, that as always, you are spiritually wired for love, for success, for abundance, for health. And I will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Spiritually Wired. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and leave a review. It really makes a big difference for the podcast. And if you're ready to dive deeper and join a soul-led community, come be a part of the Spiritually Wired membership. With weekly live lessons and a rich library of recorded classes, it's designed to support you every step of the way on your spiritual journey. We currently have a special offer where you can receive your first month for half the price. You can find a link in the show notes or come check it out at reneewalkerwellness.com. Until next time, remember to take some deep breaths. Remember that you are spiritually wired.